Hello students, welcome to the 17th presentation on microeconomics. This is the second unit in the theory of production. I hope the earlier sessions have been useful to you and you have been sharing it with your friends who are studying any course that requires economics, ranging from commerce to economics to social work to medicine to engineering. Almost everybody today has some element of economics in their curriculum. So let me move on to the law of diminishing returns. I teach with a little bit of a history of the subject so that you can understand how these subjects have developed over time and how the original idea came about. In this particular idea, this observation by Turgot, who was a French thinker in 1767, he propounded this idea that it can never be imagined that a doubling of expenditure on agriculture will help doubling the output. So this observation that he made about the way agriculture works, physiocrats were essentially agriculturists, and they believed in the power of nature. So he believed that it is not possible to increase the production by double unit if we have invested an increased unit of money in the agricultural activities. It will not result in that. Now, this was only an observation. But once this observation was made as early as 1767, it was later picked up by David Ricardo and Thomas Malthus in 1815 and 1817. That's quite some time later that these ideas were picked up. And both of them developed these ideas further in their areas of interest. For example, David Ricardo developed it into the theory of rent, and he made this statement: if the quantity of a given factor of production is increased, the marginal output of production process will decrease, leading to lower returns. So it is not going to happen that just because we have invested more in that head of expenditure in agriculture, we will get more output. That's not going to happen. And his famous theory was the Ricardian theory of rent was based on the law of diminishing marginal returns. The other theory, that is of Robert Malthus, that was the theory of population, which is very famous to understand the relationship between food and agriculture production. So that was also based on the law of diminishing returns, though more of a pessimistic idea that production cannot increase and therefore there will be food shortages and famine. Nevertheless, the idea was developed into something very different from what it was originally seen. So these two writers and their ideas on using the law of diminishing marginal return. Let us see what has been the refinement of these ideas. Now, an idea does not stop where it was created. It goes through its turmoil, it goes through its challenges, it goes through levels of acceptance, and probably it gets evolved into a new idea, or refinements will take place. So that is the same thing that has happened to an observation made in the 18th century, and this comes into be little different with Nutt, Wicksell, and Wicksteed and Clark. They developed it into the marginal productivity theory of distribution, and they did it quite independently, in the sense that those days we did not have internet where the ideas could be exchanged so rapidly. Even in those times, three independent thinkers were influenced so much by these ideas, and they converted that into the theory of marginal productivity. So this is how ideas have developed over time. Now let me look at the law of diminishing marginal returns. The idea is that the increase of any one input. There are several inputs that are used in production, but this theory relates to only one input. So if we increase the input of any one input, an equal increment with another fixed input in the short run will eventually lead to reach a point at which the additions of the input yield progressively smaller and or diminishing increase in output, which is applied to agriculture. So this idea is that we have a fixed input, which is land. on this fixed input of land, if we go on adding another input that could be labor, then if we continuously increase labor on this fixed output, fixed input land, in the short run, I have explained to you what was short run. In the short run, it is not possible to continuously get increasing returns. So the output must diminish if we continue to carry on investments in this piece of fixed land. And it was related mainly to agriculture because physiocrats themselves were agricultural thinkers. So they assume that the land size is fixed and only a certain number of people can yield the maximum output. So there is a right combination again, that there is a size of land, and on that size of land there has to be a certain number of workers who can work. When more and more workers are added to the fixed unit, the combination becomes less efficient because we have more people working on the same piece of land. So obviously the fixed asset becomes limited, and because of that, the productivity of that land or the output that we get from the land will diminish. It is not that the labor has become less efficient. That's not the issue. The issue is the land is too small for so many laborers to work, and therefore the output per worker will also begin to fall. So this rule holds in any process of production unless the technique of production also improves. Now they did not perceive that technique of production would increase, so they believe that eventually the output is going to diminish, and that is one of the reasons the ideas were called the dismal science later. The classicals who followed this idea of the physiocrats, they were called dismal science because they believed in something very negative, something that there will be a doomsday if things happen the way it is happening. So the law of diminishing returns describes a declining marginal product, but not necessarily that of a negative one. So they had not perceived that the output or productivity could become negative. Though in some places it is mentioned, but when you research on it, you find that they have not spoken about being negative. Now I have a small table for you. You can understand this table. The acres of land. So the acres of land has been fixed at 5 units for all through the study, and the number of laborers we have increased. Each time we have increased the number of laborers. One, two. Second time on a 5 acre land we have got 2 laborers. The third time we have got 3 laborers. Fourth time 4 laborers. Fifth time 5 laborers, and the sixth time we have got 6 laborers on one piece of land which is of 5 acres. Now, what has happened to the total product? Total product is the total amount of goods that are produced by at a particular time. So here we are talking about total product to be 8. Then we see that the product has increased because we have got more workers, and therefore the output has increased from 8 kilograms or whatever to 20 units. Then the third member joins in, then the output has increased to 33 units, then it goes to 44 units, then it goes to 52 units and 58. Now you may ask me, where is this diminishing returns happening? You must now distinguish between two terms here: total product term and marginal product term. What is a total product? It is an addition of all the units that are produced with different combination of workers and land. So if you have 6 workers working on a 5 acre land, then the output is 58. So they did not talk about negative returns, so they assume that when more and more workers are put, the returns will diminish, but not necessarily negative. And in the last column, you have a new product here, marginal product. The same what you did in marginal utility, that idea of utility has been put here in terms of marginal product. So what is marginal product? What is the addition made to the total utility, total production when one more laborer is added? So the first time there is no marginal productivity because that is the first unit. Now look at the second one, what has happened? The 20 minus 8. So total output has increased to 20, but the first output was only 8. So if you want to know how much that addition has been made by this additional worker, so this additional worker has contributed 12 units. How did you get 12 units? 20 minus 8 gives you 12. Then you get 33. The third time when a third laborer is engaged in production, the total product reaches 33. So what is the marginal product? 33 minus 30. That is 13 is the marginal product or the contribution made by the third laborer. Take the fourth case, 44 is the total product, but now you can see that the contribution made by that additional worker is only 11, and thereafter you can see the total output is definitely increasing, but the marginal contribution or the additional contribution by the additional labor is not actually increasing, it is just diminishing. So from 12 it became 13, it increased, then it reached the peak, then it started coming down at 11 and 7 and then 6. So here the table proves that production will increase for some time, reach at maximum and then come down. This is a simple diagram that the classical economists could possibly think of. That means the total production curve is the one, the marginal production curve is the one that is an inverted U shape, and it shows that when the laborers are increasing, the marginal product is also increasing. It reaches its maximum at point M, and thereafter at M with the labor ON, the maximum production happens at OM labor. Thereafter, when more and more laborers are employed, the marginal returns from that factor actually begins to diminish. So we have this famous statement, economists are not myth making when we tell our students that if the law of diminishing returns were not true, the world's food supply could be grown in a flower pot, isn't it? So it means that we need land and we need laborers, but we can't think that if this law did not operate, we could have taken one small piece of land and we could have provided the food to the entire nation. Now that doesn't happen. So it shows that the observation made by Turgot in the early years of the physiocrats thinking, it is very true even today, because it shows that we need more land and we need more labor if we want to increase the production. So we can't grow crops from a flower pot, because flower pot also has got diminishing returns. The question is this law applicable in real life? It was understood only for agriculture, because they understood agriculture better. But today when you look at this law, you will find that it applies to all activities in day-to-day life. There is no production activity that you can continuously do for many hours. For example, even learning, if you say that there are times that you can spend on investing in learning for a period that you have concentration, and after that when you see that actually the retention or the learning that you have will begin to decline. It could be for, I used to tell this example to students, that on a campus when we have too many cultural activities, then that also operates the law of diminishing marginal productivity. Students do not like to contribute more to these kind of activities if the numbers are too large. So there is always an optimum number, there is always a right number, there is always the appropriate combination of the factors of production that we talk as in production to give us the maximum return. The question is, how do we reach that point, and is it possible to stay at that point as we go by? Of course, it is not so possible. So firms and agricultural activities do experience what is known as the law of diminishing marginal returns. So thank you. Do share it with your friends. It will be useful to them as well.